Ladies and gentlemen, today I come bearing gifts for you guys. That means we're about to go over like, I don't know, 1 million or something. Switch 2 game leaks. Some of these are massive, and some of these I think are coming sooner than later. So let's go ahead and get right into this video. Yeah, upcoming Switch 2 games. We're going to go over some leaks today. Just how everything is playing out, I think we're going to see a lot of this sooner than later, so that's pretty cool. So before we get started, if you could, hit a like and subscribe. That would truly mean the world to me. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter so we can keep our amazing communities growing and hype the videos, because you guys did it yesterday and that was pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and get right into it. So the first thing I want to do is go over some updates that are coming directly from Nintendo. And I found this little pattern. Essentially, every time there's a big firmware update, during that update, I think Nintendo's updating also like games that were having issues on the Switch 2, playing from the Switch, like Switch to Switch 2 games. Because you know there's some games that are having issues, and then every now and then they'll put out a list saying these games are working. Every time there's a huge firmware update, like a week later we get that list. And we have a list today. I'll be honest, it's not the most interesting list, but there is a game on this list. And I think this is gonna come out with the Switch 2 version, which we know is in development. But the new list of games that were just fixed is Demo Reborn, Library of Ruina, I can't even say it, Powerful Pro Baseball 2024-2025, Ultra Age, and Warframe. So I've never heard of any of these games except maybe Power Pro Baseball and Warframe. The reason why I think Warframe is getting fixed right now, which I didn't even know there was an issue with, Warframe has an official Switch 2 version in development, and I want to say like maybe a week ago, the Warframe developers were live on Twitch previewing some gameplay or maybe something like that. I know they were talking about the game and showed off something. So I think the Switch 2 edition of Warframe will be coming like very, very soon. And that's going to be a very interesting game to be able to play portably, because it's just one of the most impressive free-to-play games there possibly is. Now I want to go over an update coming from a gaming journalist, so not a game leaker. This is somebody who interviews developers like head on. They get the information firsthand. Now they're saying something here, but I just have some text of it, and just reading text, kind of hard to get the feel of how somebody's talking. But I think I understand what they're saying here, and it makes sense. And I'm talking about the Switch 2 dev kit situation. Kiwi Talks claims the lack of Switch 2 dev kits is a tactic by Nintendo to prevent eShop shovelware. The reason Nintendo is not providing dev kits is they're trying to lessen the shovelware problem Switch 1 has. They would rather indie devs just use Switch 1 dev kits in most cases. They do not want the Switch 2 eShop overrun with shovelware slop, and it's to ensure that big third parties get seen more on the eShop and don't get buried by shovelware. That makes sense, right? This is a deliberate tactic by Nintendo. Somebody in the comments is like, it shares an eShop with the Switch 1 and it's already flooded. I'd love to make stuff up. Bullshit, the problem's worse than ever. On the surface, you're right, but I don't think you're looking at this correctly. Yes, the Switch eShop is shared, Switch 1 and Switch 2. So when I go on my Switch 2 eShop, I see the same game as Switch 1. But what I think he's trying to say is that we do not get Switch 2 shovelware. Every Switch 2 game we've seen so far is deliberate. I truly don't think we've seen anything remotely close to shovelware, and that's why Nintendo is keeping these dev kits close. So they're not putting them out there for everybody. That way, these little simulator games and adult games and all this stuff, we're not seeing Switch 2 versions of those games. Yes, they're still in the eShop, but they're Switch 1 games. Yes, you can access them on your Switch 2, but we're not seeing Switch 2 versions of this. So if you go look for a Switch 2 game, you're seeing something quality, or in most cases quality. I know we've had a couple misses so far, but this does make sense. That's why Nintendo's keeping those dev kits close. Yes, we want Switch 2 versions of a lot of games that were on the Switch 1 that we're not seeing. I mean, if I could get a Switch 2 version of like 50 games that are on the Switch 1, if I can't upgrade them, I would honestly probably buy them again. Just saying, because I want to play them higher quality. But if it's going to weed out having all the shovelware, Switch 2 versions of shovelware, the first time we see like, do your laundry simulator with a Switch 2 logo, I'm going to lose it, man. So I'm happy we're not seeing that, and I think this is the reason why. Now, before we get into a few Switch 2 game leaks, I have my own Switch 2 game leaks, and this is coming from a very trusted website. I've used it 1,000,000 times. It was actually my very first brand deal ever, but it's a website where you buy game keys and I was just looking for game keys to put in my eShop sell videos, and I found weird listings for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I know it doesn't mean anything on there, but the fact that they have like cover art and just like whole pages for it, I just find it a little strange and intriguing. So let's go over those quickly before we get into some bigger leaks. So this is the first one right here, Mafia 2 Definitive Edition Switch. So it's not even saying Switch 2, it's saying the Switch. But this has an official page showing out of stock. Get notified by email on stock availability. When you're buying a game key, you're buying the digital version of that game. Maybe they got some kind of information saying that this is coming over to the eShop. These make perfect sense. The Mafia trilogy, that is the perfect games to port over to the Switch and Switch 2. Maybe not the Switch, but I don't see why not. We got Red Dead, GTA trilogy, and LA Noire, so I don't see why not, at least the first and second one. Timing is crazy. I just beat Mafia Definitive Edition for the very first time in my entire life, like a month ago, so crazy. But let me show you the other one that I would lose my mind if it came true. Look at this. Like, the logo looks so damn legit. I know anybody can make a logo, but the fact that we're seeing a cover for this with the logo and a whole page, and this looks like a higher quality version of Astral Chain. If you played the game, you know it's one of the best games that was ever released on the Switch. Truly, like, top 5 Switch game for me. I think so. But it was a little rough around the edges. This looks so much higher quality. Again, anybody can make this, and I'm not saying this is anything, but it just looks intriguing. Release date 2025. 2025 is not over just yet. But, you know, this is wishful thinking. But I did find it interesting, so that's why we talked about it. Now, if you've been following along for the past 4 or 5 days now, I do not know how we keep getting back to this point. To recap, 4 or 5 days ago, I found a leak from Nash Weedle. I thought he was talking about GTA and Red Dead Redemption 2. But it turned out to be Max Payne and Alan Wake 2. Cool. But then in the comments, somebody asked him, is Red Dead 2 coming this year to the Switch 2? And he said yes. Interesting. But then it died down. Yesterday, we found the Steam page was updated for Red Dead Redemption 2 for the first time since 2018, I think. Okay, very strange timing, very interesting. But it doesn't mean anything. But it's hard to not look at that, right? Well, it's a new day and we are somehow back to Red Dead Redemption 2. Nate the Hate says Switch 2 and Gen 9 ports of Red Dead Redemption 2 exist. Are you absolutely certain with full confidence Red Dead Redemption 2 Switch 2 Gen 9 updates exist? Realistically, we have October and November. After that, it's likely full steam ahead on marketing for GTA. And they're right. Once 2026 hits, I don't know if we have a release date locked in. It might be July of 2026 for GTA 6. I know it was November in 2025, but in 2026, I think it's July so far. It doesn't make sense to release Red Dead Redemption 2 next year. Nate the Hate, yes, they exist. I have no update on timing for release. There's a couple leakers here. I'm like, yeah, they're very credible. Yes, they get it all right. Yes, sometimes they get it wrong, but still pay attention to. This is Nate the Hate, who tells you when a direct is coming that week, who told us when the Switch 2 was getting revealed the night before. Tells you stuff about Xbox happening, PlayStation stuff happening. If Nate the Hate is saying Red Dead Redemption 2 is happening for the Switch 2 and Generation 9, I think it's happening, man. Like I said yesterday, if it's happening this year, I think it gets released in November. I think it gets announced maybe at the beginning of November and then launches the end of November, and that's the holiday game, the big holiday game from Rockstar that will make them millions and millions of dollars, like, extra aside from GTA 6. But ladies and gentlemen, do not worry, I have more leaks for you. The biggest Nintendo game coming out this year, I mean, Pokemon I think is going to be the biggest game for the Switch 2 so far once it's out, but I think the most important Switch 2 game is Metroid Prime 4. Now, on the recent Nintendo Prime podcast, I was on there with Andres Restart, Nintendo Prime, Thunderstash, Gamebird, all these amazing people to talk to, and they were all saying they feel like Metroid Prime 4, the marketing hasn't really ramped up yet, and there's some more bigger announcements. But them and me, we also feel like there's other Metroid stuff coming this year leading you into Metroid Prime 4. What's that going to be? If you were to guess, probably 2 and 3, the same way we got the Pikmin collection, upscaled a little bit, not full-on remasters, but just better versions. And I do think that's probably what's going to happen, but I don't think that's all that's going to happen. Look at these trademarks I found right here that are pending. Metroid Prime 3, Metroid Prime Hunters. Weird timing on this. Look at the filing right here, June 6, 2025. Strange. That's a few months ago. I think we're getting some more Metroid stuff before Metroid Prime 4 comes out. That comes out in November. I think in that big Nintendo Direct we'll get for Metroid Prime 4, at the end, they'll say, oh yeah, by the way, we have these games coming out, ported over to the Switch and Switch 2 in a collection. I think a collection the same way they did Galaxy and Galaxy 2. Unfortunately, for $70 makes the most sense for them doing this, right? Upscaled, maybe new textures or something, but I think we're getting more Metroid Prime stuff. And I think it's all or nothing, honestly, for Metroid Prime 4. I know that sounds like I'm being a little extra. This game is allegedly $100 million, and it had to be developed damn near twice, you know what I mean? If Nintendo just breaks even, maybe they'll continue with it. But if it didn't break even, I think we're done seeing 3D Metroid. So I think they need to put out all this Metroid stuff as much as possible, get people familiar with it. Maybe do a Switch 2 upgrade for Metroid Prime 1 Remastered. Do a little collection. I know there's also a book that's getting released. I think it's like all or nothing truly with Metroid Prime 4. So I think we're getting Metroid news, and not just what we already expect. But ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about this? Because your opinion matters most. So in the comments below, I would love to hear from you guys. If you made it all the way to this part of the video, like all the way right here, you're very cool. Some say the coolest. So yeah, like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter so we can keep the communities growing. Consider becoming a channel member. That is the ultimate way to support and hype up the videos, whatever the hell that means. And you guys know me. I'll see you very soon with a new video. Peace out.